Welcome to the Week 11 recap. We have plenty of games on the slate today that have a lot of implications for the rest of the season. Let's start in Camp Randall, where number 8 Wisconsin is hosting Ohio State, who is one of two undefeated teams in the entire country right now. The conference implications for these two is pretty simple. They're both in the same Big Ten division, and both teams have not lost a Big Ten game. The winner will take a stranglehold on their Big Ten division and have the inside track to representing the Big Ten East in the Big Ten championship game. We'll pick this game up pretty early on with 5:10 remaining in the first quarter. 3rd and 4 for Ohio State, looking to make a play. Kyle McCord makes a beautiful throw to a Mekik Buka for 13 yards out, and Ohio State takes an early 7-0 lead. But luckily, Wisconsin will be able to respond pretty quickly on their next time with the ball. First quarter winding down, 50 seconds to go, 2nd and goal. Under center for Tanner Mordecai. He's looking and on the run, able to find his man Clay Cundiff from 4 yards out, and this game is tied early. But you know that avalanche of Ohio State consistency would come. Next time we see them, there's 1 minute and 20 left in the first half, up 14-7, 1st and goal, under center for Kyle McCord and company, looking to try and power this one home as best as they can. And they get the snap and the handoff. That's Travion Henderson from not even a yard out, and Ohio State goes up 21-7 early on, and that's the lead that they would take into halftime. And Wisconsin would continue to struggle to get anything moving on the offensive end, and then they would have to keep giving the ball back to Ohio State, who midway through the 3rd quarter has another opportunity on 3rd and 9. Kyle McCord getting great protection, finds his man, G. Scott Jr. from 12 yards, not getting into the end zone, but that would lead to an easy Ohio State score, and they would go up 28-7. We do see that Wisconsin offense again, though. 3 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter. 3rd and 8, looking for a play. That ball is tipped, and Wisconsin would have to punt again, down by 3 scores, and their opportunities were fading quickly. Then, first play of the 4th quarter, 9 minutes to go, 1st and goal. This is another handoff, Travion Henderson from 3 yards out, and their slow, methodical approach down the field wore down Wisconsin pretty early in offense. Then Wisconsin, last chance, down by 4 scores, 7 minutes to go, 4th and 10. Gotta have it here if you want any chance. He throws underneath, his man can't make it to the first down marker, turnover on downs, and Ohio State would win this one pretty handily in a very big statement victory going into Camp Randall the way they did, and really handling a good Wisconsin team that had only lost to North Carolina so far this year. The next game on our schedule is Michigan and Penn State. It's snowing in Ann Arbor, the conditions were not favorable, but there were plenty of fireworks to be had in this one. And coming into this game, you can see that both offenses are pretty decent and do a good job of putting points on the board. And Penn State is still in contention in their Big Ten division with only 1 loss. We'll see how it goes for them as they're up 10-7 early on against Michigan. A little bit left in the 1st quarter, and Drew Allaire just throws a very long-lasting ball up in the air, and that one is picked off by Michigan, and they're able to take that back inside the 5-yard line, and that would eventually lead to a field goal for Michigan to tie this one up. And Drew Allaire cannot believe that he made that mistake on that play. Next time we see them, Penn State's up 4, end of the half situation, and J.J. McCarthy finds his man Christian Dixon for 18 yards, and then the next play on 1st and goal out of the backfield is Donovan Edwards, and Michigan takes a 3-point lead going into the half of a very entertaining game so far, as J.J. McCarthy looks fully healthy after recovering from an injury. Then, first drive in the 3rd quarter, J.J. McCarthy throws a bomb, finds his man, streaking down the sideline on a 3rd and 6, and now Michigan holds a 2-score lead, and the pressure has shifted to Penn State, and they are the team that needs this game in the division if they want to keep pace. Another 3rd down situation for Michigan, finds his man again, Roman Wilson this time from 23 yards out, and now Michigan holds a 34-17 lead, but Penn State would have a little bit up their sleeve still. They cut into this lead, only down by 10, minute 25 left in the 3rd quarter, 3rd down of their own. They find their man out there, that's Liam Clifford for 8 yards. That would eventually lead to a Penn State field goal to cut this to a 7-point lead. Next time Michigan has the ball, 7:47 remaining. Drop back for McCarthy, hits his man, and he'll find his way into the end zone. That's Cornelius Johnson from 10 yards out, and Michigan maintains that 2-score lead. Then Penn State, further cutting into this lead, 2 minutes to go, down by 11, 2nd and goal, Drew Allaire looking, hits his man, this time it's Theo Johnson from 3 yards out. With a 2-point conversion, they cut this to a 41-38 lead, but they would need a defensive stop at this point. It's a 3rd and 4 for Michigan, no timeouts for Penn State. A first down ends the game if they can get it here. If they get the stop though, Penn State will get the ball back with some chance to win this game or at this point. Then there's a sack on J.J. McCarthy, which eventually forces a long field goal that does go through and gives Michigan a 6-point lead. 10 seconds remaining, no timeouts. Penn State needs to make something happen, and instead it's a drop-off. He can't get out of bounds. Harrison Wallace is tackled inbounds. That will run out the clock, and that will run out the clock on Penn State's chances in this game. Michigan gets a big win. They started very poorly this season, but they have rebounded nicely, and they have beaten all of the best teams in their division, but struggled outside of the division. And because of those losses, they probably won't have a chance to win it on their own, but they spoil Penn State's chances with this game today. Next up, a traditional rivalry we all love in the SEC. LSU and Alabama, both teams have not had exactly the seasons that they would have wanted. It's a little strange to look at the SEC West standings and see these two as the middle ground teams at 4 and 5, and with 3 losses in conference already. Both teams are in a rough spot and probably not going to be able to work their way back up to the top of this division at this point, but plenty to play for still. These two teams always come out playing for pride and wanting to make a statement, and one team sure did make a statement in today's game. LSU is driving down the field with their first drive of the game. It's 3rd and 7. Jaden Daniels and company, and their potent offense wanting to establish themselves early. A nice drop back for Daniels, plenty of protection, steps up, throws it deep, hits his man, Kyron Lacey for 38 yards, and that puts them in position for their first touchdown of the game. But would Alabama have a response? In the pistol, Jaden Milroe has a play action fake, looks, and he is picked off by the Oregon State transfer Omar Spates. He'll return this to about the 18-yard line, and LSU has put themselves in position early to take control. 2nd and 2 for LSU. 5:40 to go in the first quarter. They're still early. Fires a great ball to the back of the end zone. That's Brian Thomas Jr. from 11 yards. And LSU has a 14-0 lead early, and they would put themselves in another great spot. 1st and goal, under 3 minutes to go in the first quarter. And Daniels will do it himself, rush into the end zone. And that's all you would need to see as LSU established themselves early and often. Alabama never really fortified themselves, would give themselves a chance to get back into this game. They had no answer for LSU. The score looks a lot better than it actually was, and it was much more of a beatdown as LSU came out and scored 21 consecutive points and put Alabama in a hole that they could never recover from. And as you can see, Greg Brooks Jr., player of the game for LSU, ended up with 3 interceptions. Milroe continued to turn the ball over, and just overall, this was a sloppy game that both teams did not look amazing in, but the early onslaught from LSU to go up 21-0 in the fourth quarter was enough for them. And they turned the ball over 3 times of their own, but in the end, all that matters is the scoreboard, and that 12-point deficit is enough to make Alabama not look so bad, but honestly, it was a brutal game to watch, and a good win for LSU and another conference win for them. And now Bama drops 4 games in the SEC. That's clearly not what they were looking for in this season. Next game up on the schedule, we have the other undefeated team in the entire country, the Washington Huskies, and they are hosting Fresno State in today's game at Bulldog Stadium. With 18 seconds left in the first half, Washington is already up 16-0. Fresno State has tried to hold on as much as possible, but this was another dominating game for Washington. Daniel Nata able to get in from 3 yards out, giving Washington a 23-0 lead at the half. Then Michael Penix and company holding on to a 20-point lead as Fresno State barely staying in it, and Penix would put the finishing touches on this one, getting into the end zone and giving Washington a very comfortable win and continuing to cement himself as a possible Heisman contender with the way that he played today. And most importantly, keeping their national and conference championship aspirations with the win today. Final game that we'll take a look at, Ole Miss visits UCF at the Bounce House. And Ole Miss has had a pretty average season in the SEC with a 2-5 record and not looking great. But UCF 5-1 in the SEC and leading their division, so plenty to play for. If they keep on winning, they will end up winning the SEC East in their first season in the conference. First time we get a chance to see these teams is with 15 seconds left in the first half. Ole Miss is down by 4. It's a 2nd and goal opportunity. Read option look that gets Walker Howard into the end zone from 2 yards out, and that will give Ole Miss a 17-14 lead at the half. Then, UCF in the fourth quarter with 6:15 to go. It's 3rd and inches. He's scanning. Plumlee finds his man. He does not get into the end zone, but that catch would lead to an easy score where UCF would be able to retain the lead 21-17. Now with 2 minutes left in the game, it's a 3rd and 5. A conversion here really hurts Ole Miss's chances of coming back. Plumlee scans, has plenty of time, hits his man Javon Baker for a touchdown, and that would end up being the deciding score as UCF would make it through another SEC game and gets their 6th SEC win on the season. A complete success of a season for UCF so far, but I think they have bigger aspirations and they are going to continue their hunt for their first ever SEC championship with a game against Florida State next week. And then, as we mentioned, and unsurprisingly, Michael Penix has taken the pole position in the Heisman race. Caleb Williams has had a good year, but I think everybody is ready for a new winner, and Michael Penix Jr. has positioned himself in this late stretch of the season to take the Heisman home this season. Now let's take a look at some scores from the rest of the league. We already saw our 3-point win over Georgia Tech. Georgia wins 48-0 over an FCS opponent. We saw UCF win 28-17 in their game. Arkansas beat South Carolina 20-17 of former SEC foes. Then Florida needs overtime to beat Vanderbilt 35-28, but a win is a win. They'll get their 5th win on the season. Auburn, it's their first SEC win by beating Tennessee, and Tennessee has started to spiral a little bit in a 34-30 game. We saw LSU's win over Alabama 40-28, and Miami beats Clemson 23-17 in their affair. Then we go over to the Big Ten. We already saw Ohio State beat Wisconsin 35-21. Notre Dame escapes a weird game against Indiana 28-23. Iowa beats Louisville 49-17. West Virginia beats Purdue 49-24 as West Virginia gets their first Big Ten win. Michigan State beats Pittsburgh 42-28. Penn State lost to Michigan 38-44. And then Minnesota beats Illinois 20-13. And Minnesota sneakily 4-2 in the Big Ten and 7-2 overall. They've had a nice season. Then in the Big 12, Kansas State beats Missouri as they'll maintain their position at the head of the Big 12. Texas Tech beats Houston 42-26. Texas A&M beats Baylor 31-7 as A&M has had their back-and-forth season continue. Nebraska beats Tulane 49-35. Texas beats SMU 38-10. Oklahoma State beats Kansas 44-35 on their own, as Kansas drops one after a very big win over Nebraska last week. And then we saw the Arkansas score beating Nebraska 20-17. And then our final big conference set of matchups, UNLV beats Washington State 27-24, and UNLV is bowl eligible in their first season in the Pac-12. Washington's win we already saw. Colorado beats Boise State 31-3, a very nice win for Colorado over a good Boise State team. Then Arizona beats BYU 34-21. BYU loses a game they couldn't afford to lose if they wanted to stay in the Pac-12 race. UCLA beats Oregon State 38-16. Oregon beats San Diego State 28-21. And then Utah wins and maintains their position in the top part of the Pac-12 standings. Then if we go look at some standings, we see that matchup. We face UCF next week for first place in the SEC East. The only other team lurking is Georgia, who we play the week after UCF, so a lot of teams controlling some destinies. Whether it's us, UCF, or Georgia, if they win out, they will probably win the SEC East at this point, so a big matchup on deck against UCF that I cannot wait to see in the next video on this channel. Then when we head over to the SEC West, we see that North Carolina is maintaining their stranglehold over the conferences. They're still in a 2-loss situation with Mississippi State where they're tied up, but if North Carolina wins their last SEC game, they will end up being the SEC West champions in their first season in the SEC. And then business as usual in the Big Ten East as Ohio State still leads and looks to be the team to beat. And then the Big Ten West is more of a scramble, to put this very nicely. A lot of teams with 1 loss in Notre Dame and Michigan State, Penn State lurking with 2 losses, and a lot to still be decided in the Big Ten West. Then in the Division A for Big 12, TCU still undefeated, and a win over Texas puts them in a good spot. And then Kansas State holds a 1-game lead over Nebraska, but if they drop a game later on in the season, Nebraska will hold the tiebreaker over both them and Oklahoma as 2-loss teams, so Kansas State maintains pressure to continue winning if they can, as we know that Nebraska team is very dangerous, and still lurking there to try and win a Big 12 division. Washington has a stranglehold over their lead in the Pac-12. They have probably firmed up that position pretty nicely, but they need one more win to guarantee that at this point, as they hold all their tiebreakers there, and then Utah still holds their lead in the division. And then, next week, as I mentioned, Florida State, UCF, plenty on the line. If we lose that game to UCF, we are effectively out of the SEC race, so plenty to play for next week. So make sure to tune in and go Noles.